The mainstream media breathlessly reports that Stephen Breyer should be stepping down at the end of this term, but some people that are close to him are saying, hey, nobody ever said that. But we'll look at the pros, cons, and breakdown of what's happening with that. In other news, the U.S. has offered no concession in response to Russia on Ukraine, so that battle continues to go and hang over the administration's head. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Spotify chose Joe Rogan over Neil Young. So we'll talk just a bit about what that means and what that could mean for the future. And Disney is set to rethink Snow White after Peter Dinklage comes back and calls Disney backwards. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. The background music is kind of loud in my ears today. I'm not sure what's going on with that there. I don't know what's going on with if it's my headphones, because when I turn the headphones on, the warning of power on, pairing, connected was really loud too. So I don't know if it's just them, if they're having a problem, if something over there on the YouTube side is having a problem here, but we'll see what happens with that. We'll see where that goes, and we'll see what happens with some of the video that we have to watch today over here on Contemporary. Hi guys, good morning. Hi, how are we doing today? What do we got going on the agenda? We got a lot on the agenda today here. The Stephen Breyer thing, well, that's kind of pretty surprising to me, actually. Especially given, well, it's not really that surprising, and I'll explain why when we get to talking about it, but the thing that surprised me the most is, yeah, like I said, it appears that nobody knew that the MSM was going to start up with this, coming into this right now, because, well, we'll talk about that when we get to that here. But before we get started, make sure you guys go check out TurnsOfPagesProductions.com. TurnsOfPagesProductions.com will be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs, where we are set to open up with great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, and a new upcoming project featuring Britt and Sean Hickman. So go check out all of those shows. Go check out all those people. They're great people to follow. They are great people to get started with. They are great people to get your news from, and your commentary, and your culture from. So go and check all of those people out. It's a lot of fun. It's very enjoyable to be around all of them. So go and check them out and go and hang out with them. And with that, let's get into the finance for the morning here. Let's get the live chat up so I can see what you guys are saying here. Looking in at the Dow spent most of the day up throughout the day yesterday, but then took a hard drop towards the end after the Fed announced their first policy rate hike here. It was enough to erase all the gains throughout the day yesterday and bring us back down to 129.64 points, down to 34,168.09. That is down 0.38%, and we will see what happens with that and where that goes, and where the finance goes after that. Looking at your Bitcoin, Bitcoin is at 36,799 US dollars and 50 US cents. That is down 41.10 or 0.11%. Day over day from yesterday there. So a few things to watch with that, a few things to see if you're planning on holding on to Bitcoin. I'm more of a Doge fan myself, and we'll talk about that as it goes, and Shiba Inu as well. I would rather see some fun off those coins rather than look at the ones that, hey, nobody can trace, but if Bitcoin, because it's safe, is the coin that you want to hold on to right now, then absolutely buy more Bitcoin. Remember, Jo Jorgensen told us that the only way to live a truly libertarian life is to change all of your hard assets into Bitcoin. Remember, she said that on the campaign trail. And since she is our Lord and Savior, we should listen to her. Looking in at the scrap prices for the day, copper, steel, and aluminum are all in the upswing once again. I mean, copper and brass are all in the green. You can see all the green over there. Steel is a little bit more mixed. It looks like stainless steel is showing individually is the only one that's up right now. But, I mean, if we go down and we look at, okay, even heavy melting steel prepared, number two HMS. I don't see why steel is on the up right now. Because everything is showing in the red except for stainless steel, but that's what we see coming off of that. On aluminum, rims are down, but all the other aluminum plays are currently up right now. Looking in at some individual plays, electric motors are down, ballasts are up, lead is up, batteries are up. Catalytic converters, except for a small GM Cat, are all up. Compressors are up, alternators are up, carbi is up, hard drives are up, motherboards are up, power supplies, low-grade boards are down, PC towers are up. And then, yeah, looking at your heavy melting steel, number one prepared, more heavy melting steel or prepared. Those are all down, 2/3 mixed copper up, copper with tar, roofing copper, stainless steel. Well, we'll see what happens and we'll see where that goes as we look in and see what the metal prices are going to do on that. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning here. Dow Jones futures volatile after Fed Chief Jerome Powell wipes out market gains. Tesla leads earnings movers from Ed Carson. Dow Jones futures tilted higher early Friday, while S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures rose further amid volatile overnight trading. Tesla headlined key earnings after hours, while investors continued to mull a hawkish Fed. The stock market erased sharp intraday gains on Wednesday, while Treasury yields jumped after the Federal Reserve said it expects to raise interest rates soon, with Fed Chief Jerome Powell signaling that aggressive rate hikes and balance sheet cuts are coming. The major indices closed off at the very worst levels and didn't undercut Monday's lows, but it was another disappointing session for the unproven stock market rally attempt. Microsoft had fueled market gains and optimism before the Fed decision. Microsoft stock rebounded back above its 200-day moving average, even though it closed near session lows. Tesla earnings comfortably beat views late Wednesday. Tesla stock edged lower in volatile overnight trade. Meanwhile, Seagate, Lam Research, Teradyne, Intel, Silicon Motion Technology, United Rentals, Ameriprise Financial, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Edward Lifestyles, and ServiceNow also reported earnings late on Wednesday. STX stocks and ServiceNow were notable winners overnight, while Edwards, LRX, CX stock, Silicon Motion, and especially Teradyne were losers. Tesla stock and Microsoft are on the IBD leaderboard. Microsoft and Now stock are IBD long-term leaders. For the Fed meeting. The Fed meeting ended Wednesday afternoon with policymakers signaling a March rate hike, saying it will soon be appropriate. Asset purchases will wind down in early March as planned, despite some speculation that bond buys could end in February. Fed Chief Jerome Powell followed up on his press conference saying that there's quite a bit of room to raise rates without hurting the job market. Yeah, but the housing market, dude, the housing is not what the job market is going to come back no matter what once these people start getting kicked off welfare and realizing that, well, not kicked off welfare, but kicked off of unemployment, and they start realizing they need to go to work to make a decent amount of money, not just take whatever welfare breadcrumbs their state offers them. That's going to start coming back at some point on its own. It's the housing market and the ability to buy a house that I'm watching hawkishly as we start talking about these rate hikes. He wouldn't rule out raising rates at every meeting in 2022 starting in March. Powell once again said the Fed could move very soon and fast to cut its huge balance sheet. Then during the last cycle, saying the economy is stronger now, he stressed that the Fed has not made any decision about speed or timing of any balance sheet cuts, but they will come after the first rate hike. He's against crypto, Spartan. You should have that conversation in the live chat. Powell once again said the Fed can move faster to cut its huge balance sheet during the last cycle. We said that one already. Powell didn't say anything surprising, but he sounded like a Fed chief focused on fighting high inflation, not bending over backwards to soothe jittery markets. The 10-year Treasury yield rose 7 basis points to 1.85%, mostly as Powell spoke. That's slightly below the 2-year high of 1.87%. Set on January 19th, the 2-year Treasury yield jumped 13 basis points to 1.15% as the yield spread continued to narrow. On your futures, the Dow futures were up 0.2% versus fair value, swinging between modest gains and losses all morning. The S&P 500 futures climbed 0.5%, NASDAQ 100 futures climbed 0.75% after tumbling nearly 2% Wednesday night. The 10-year Treasury yield dipped 2 basis points to 1.83%, but the 2-year yield continued to run up, adding 4 basis points to 1.19%. Crude oil futures rose about 1%, continuing their strong advance into multi-year highs and taking the gas prices with them, by the way. 309 in town. 309 out here in the not in town. It's, I think, 304 in town in Janesville proper. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, the Commerce Department will release its first estimates for fourth quarter GDP growth. The Labor Department will release weekly jobless claims. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Let's grab one from CNN really quick. This is a live updater here. Stock sink as the Fed points to a March rate hike. So this is your live blog, of course. Stocks finishing mostly lower as Fed signals interest rate hikes are coming soon. The Dow finished 0.4% or 130 points lower. The S&P closed down 0.1%. The NASDAQ composite ended flat. Is a half-point rate hike a possibility? Sure, Powell suggests. And stocks tumble. Wall Street is really unhappy with Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell today after saying the Fed could unwind its balance sheet sooner and faster than expected. Powell didn't dismiss the possibility that it could hike rates faster than the market expects either. As for the potential of a half-point rate hike this year, Powell declined to comment one way or another, but he noted that inflation is significantly worse now than it was in 2015, when it last began hiking rates. He also said the job market is in a stronger position. Still, he said the Fed will begin to discuss rate hikes in March. Stocks are hating this. And the Treasury yields have jumped, so higher interest rates are coming soon for government bond yields, which tracks rate expectations. That means the sky is the limit. The 10-year Treasury bond jumped back up above 1.8% during the Fed's press conference, a level it hit last week for the first time since the pandemic started. Toward the end of Powell's time at the podium, the 10-year bond yielded 1.83%. So that's what we're seeing up in the live blog here. And yeah, I mean, just all the markets are hating the fact that they're talking about rate hiking. But, I mean, where do you go at this point? Do you just keep pumping funny money into the economy and hoping that a gallon of milk doesn't cost $10 to $15? Or do you actually do something about this to try to hold on to what little bit of credibility the US dollar still has? And I think as much as I worry about what this will do to the housing market, I think this is the only option that Powell has. I don't think it's the right option. I think it's the only one he has left. But that's what we see coming off of that. Let's grab one more finance article here because I thought you guys, especially as much as my audience loves crypto, so everybody make sure that you're ready and poised to go buy your crypto. Because it's the only way, like Jorgensen said, the only way to live a truly libertarian lifestyle is to turn all of your US dollars into crypto, especially Bitcoin, because they can't trace that. Let's grab one from Insider here. Elon Musk says he'll eat a Happy Meal on TV if McDonald's accepts Dogecoin payments. From Kate Duffy. Elon Musk appeared on Tuesday to urge McDonald's to accept Dogecoin as a payment, saying he'd eat a Happy Meal on TV if the chain did so. Last week, Billy Marcus, the co-founder of Doge, replied to a McDonald's tweet featuring a picture of fries saying, "I want a fry." McDonald's then replied to Marcus's tweet with a picture of Shiba Inu, the mascot of Dogecoin, and also Shiba Coin. Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, tweeted on Tuesday, "I will eat a Happy Meal on TV if McDonald's accepts Dogecoin." By the way, because I've been watching movies lately, movies I've seen mostly, but movies I've been watching lately with a more critical eye, practicing for a new project I have upcoming, for a new channel, doing actual movie reviews with a partner. And it's going to be a shifting guest every time we do a movie, of course. It's not going to be the same guest every time. But I watched Iron Man 2 last night. Elon Musk is in Iron Man 2. Like, this was before I knew who Elon Musk was the first time I saw that movie. I didn't know who Elon was until, like, 2015, 2016. But, yeah, there he is, right in the middle of the fucking movie in Monaco. Talking with Tony Stark about an electric jet. McDonald's didn't immediately reply to Musk's tweet or respond to insiders' request for comment on the matter. Responding to Marcus's tweet last week, another user tweeted McDonald's, "If you guys accepted Doge payments, I would go more often." McDonald's replied, "We appreciate hearing your interest and continuously evaluate the payments experience." Musk is a long-standing advocate of Doge, and his tweets referencing the crypto often move the market. Before he posted the McDonald's tweet Tuesday, Doge was at about 13.5 cents a coin, way off of its 30 cents a coin where it was at its high, but still better than 0.3 cents a coin. Shortly after he tweeted, the coin was trading at about 14 cents, a gain of nearly 4%. What have I said? What have I said about Bitcoin? What have I said about Dogecoin? What have I said about Shiba Inu? The coin that I have the most of right now. If Shiba Inu, by the way, ever took off, I would, well, actually, I don't know that I would be rich, but I'd be very happy. If Shiba Inu got to where Doge is right now, I'd be really happy. Just to let you know how much Shiba Inu I have. I don't know if it's got the ability to do so, but it's amazing on a coin that's very, very small what 20 bucks will do as far as the number of coins. And yeah, if Shiba took off right now, I would, like I say, I wouldn't be rich. I wouldn't be independently wealthy. I wouldn't be buy a compound in the middle of the desert and set up a pirate radio signal through turnsofpagesproductions.com. I wouldn't be there, but I'd be a lot happier than I was right now if that did take off. But what have I said from the top of this? One of the weaknesses of the crypto markets, the cryptocurrencies, and the fact that actually people were going out and looking at the idea of, hey, let's go start using Bitcoin here, was the fact that Bitcoin was one of the first ones where you could pay for stuff either online or sometimes in person with Bitcoin. That's one of the weaknesses of the crypto markets. You can't spend your cryptocurrency. That's one of the biggest weaknesses to it. In order to spend it, you have to turn it back into the US dollar. And I know that's been one of the pet projects of Elon Musk since the start of, since his start of interest in cryptocurrency, is trying to find a way to get other people to be able to spend their cryptocurrency rather than turning it back into the US dollar, which for a currency to be able to survive is an important aspect to this, is you have to be able to spend it in order for it to be legal tender for anything. You have to actually be able to use it instead of turning it into another. Otherwise, it's just another savings account. That's all that it is another savings account. If you can't spend it. But that's what we see coming off of that. Let's get into the big news of the day in the title card and see what it is that we have to say with this. From ABC News. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer to retire at the end of his term, from Devin Dwyer, Cecilia Vega, and Jonathan Karl. Justice Stephen G. Breyer, the most senior member of the U.S. Supreme Court's liberal wing and staunch defender of a nonpartisan judiciary, will retire from the bench at the end of the current term, fulfilling the wish of Democrats who lobbied for his exit and clearing the way for President Joe Biden's first high court appointment, his probably only high court appointment, and we'll talk about that. Breyer, the court's oldest member at 83, will step down despite apparent good health, deep passion for the job, and active involvement in the cases. Three sources familiar with the situation confirmed to ABC News there has not been an official confirmation from the court or from Breyer's chambers. Last term, he authored major opinions upholding the ACA, affirming free speech rights of students off campus, and resolving a multi-billion-dollar copyright dispute between two titans of American technology, Google and Oracle. He's been operating at the peak of his powers, said Jeffrey Rosen, law professor and president of the National Constitution Center. It was so inspiring that this term, his pragmatic vision of compromise and moderation, were ascendant, and all the unanimous decisions were moving tribute to his inspiring legacy. While Breyer has disavowed political considerations, many will see them in his decision to leave. No, he has nothing but political considerations if he leaves. I'm sorry. For a guy who enjoys his job as much as Stephen Breyer does, and he loves to talk. He loves to make his decisions. He loves to actually sit down and analyze both sides of the argument. What he is doing right now is a major political decision. Stepping down early in the Brandon presidency, and while Democrats retain a razor-thin majority in the U.S. Senate, will help ensure his seat is filled with someone who shares his judicial philosophy. No, it will not. No, it absolutely will not. It's a highly personal decision, Breyer told ABC News of retirement in a 2015 interview. Progressive activists had imposed an unprecedented public pressure on Breyer, who was nominated in 1994 by President Clinton to retire. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said last June that the GOP might try to block a Democratic nominee to the court if the party wins control of the Senate in November and a vacancy occurs in 2023 or 2024. Many Democrats remain haunted by Republican obstruction of President Barack Obama's nominee to the court in 2016 and the rush confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Yeah, you're going to be hearing about that for a long fucking time. Last year, just weeks before the 2020 election, and after the sudden death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In the lead up to his retirement, Breyer distanced himself from partisan politics. It is wrong to think of the court as another political institution, he said in an April speech at Harvard Law School, and it's doubly wrong to think of its members as junior league politicians. He added justices are loyal to the rule of law, not to the political party that helped secure their appointment. Bullshit. He's very savvy, said Rosen. He understands that democracy is fragile, and people in the past have not obeyed the court, and the court doesn't have any ability to enforce its decisions. That is why being attentive to its legitimacy is so important to him. The vacancy now clears the way for Biden to nominate an African-American woman to the court. Yeah, we'll be talking about that in just a second. A historic first, and something he promised during the 2020 campaign. There have been 5 female justices in Supreme Court history. 3 are currently serving. Justices Barrett, Kagan, Sotomayor, the first and only woman of color confirmed to the High Court. U.S. Appeals Court Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, a former Breyer clerk, public defender, and Biden appointee who won 3 Senate Republican votes in confirmation, is considered a top contender for nomination, along with Judge Leandra Kruger of California's Supreme Court, a former Deputy Solicitor General in the Obama admin who argued a dozen cases before the High Court. Now, as I promised, because we'll go into, down here on the CNN article here, we'll be talking about the short list of people off of this. So we'll be talking about that just a little bit later off of this, but let's look at what's happening here. Now, let's actually first take this at its face value. That yes, Stephen Breyer has said that he will step down. And I've got a few announcements off of here, especially like this one here from Shannon Bream that says that multiple sources tell me that Breyer was not planning to announce his retirement today, so we'll be talking about that in just a second. But let's take this at face value for just a second and say, yes, Breyer made the announcement that at the end of this term, he's done. He's out. Unless he dies before that, there's not going to be a vacancy after this. And the term does end before the midterms. So with that being said, with us being in the situation that we're in right now, I do believe that if this is true, if we take this at face value, that Stephen Breyer knows that A, He's not going to make it through 6 years, first and foremost. And B, he knows that the Democrats have fucked up so much at this point that they stand, even if it goes 51-49 in favor of Republicans, Democrats have the possibility, and it's a greater and greater possibility every day, to lose the Senate. Now, if they lose the Senate, yes, President Brandon can go ahead and put up another nominee no matter what. But on a 51-49 in Republicans' favor Senate, that nominee just sits. That nominee just sits there, doesn't do a goddamn thing. So, with that, we're looking at a situation where, if this is true, and once again, I don't know if this is actually true. I do think that there was some shenanigans that went along with this decision to get this released out into the public and out into the world. But if this is true, this is very telling as to what's going to happen in the midterms coming up, and what they think could happen coming up in 2024 and beyond. So that's where we go with that, and that's what we see out of that. Let's grab one from Weijia Zhang, who is blue check marked because she's a senior CBS News White House correspondent, a Chinese-born West Virginian from William and Mary and Syracuse University. President Biden said that he would have more to say later about Justice Breyer's intention to retire, and he pointed out that Breyer has not formally announced his plan to leave the Supreme Court. The first confirmation, but the first question as to whether or not he's actually going to, coming from the big guy himself, the guy that gets 10% himself, Joe Biden. Oh wait, we're not supposed to talk about that last part. But no, as of this point, Breyer has not formally released his intention to retire. Now the copium from members of the right at this point here, which, by the way, if this does happen, there's no stopping this. This doesn't stop anywhere. Aside from some sort of actual major heinous crime like a murder, this doesn't stop. There's no way. The precedent has been set. They will speed whoever they need to through. They'll get somebody through in 8 hours if they need to, just like I promised that they would have if Amy Coney Barrett's seat had actually been filled by Hillary Clinton a few days before an election. They would have had that confirmation. They would have had the nomination confirmation done in about 4 hours if this was going from the left. But let's read the cope, shall we? The big cope, the copium, the hopium, if you will. From the Daily Wire, McConnell could stop Biden from replacing Justice Breyer due to a little notice backroom deal report. How does it go? This one weird trick could keep Biden from nominating a Supreme Court justice when he has the majority. Read this clickbait to find out what it is. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell can reportedly stop Democratic President Joe Biden from being able to replace Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, should Breyer indeed decide to retire as expected. With judicial nominees, only 51 votes are needed to confirm a nominee, commonly referred to as the nuclear option. In a 50-50 tied Senate, Democrats will likely need all their senators to vote for the nominee, then would need Vice President Kamala Harris to be the tie-breaking vote. But the nuclear option can go into motion only if the Judiciary Committee reports the nomination to the floor, a procedural move that says whether a majority on the committee recommends the full Senate consider the pick. Time magazine reported, well, in a little notice backroom deal that took more than a month to hammer out, that's not McConnell voice, that's Time magazine. In a little notice backroom deal that took more than a month to hammer out, McConnell and Majority Leader Chuck Schumer agreed to a power-sharing plan in February that splits committee membership, staff's budget in half. If all 11 Republican members of the Judiciary Committee oppose Biden's pick and all 11 Democrats back her, the nomination goes inert. The nomination doesn't die, but it does get parked until a lawmaker, historically the leader of the party, brings it to the floor for 4 hours of debate, the report added. A majority of the Senate, 51 votes typically, can then put the debate about the issue on the calendar for the next day, but that's the easy part. When the potential pick comes to the floor again, it's not as a nomination at that point. It's a motion discharge, a cloture motion that requires 60 votes. In other words, 10 Republicans would have to resurrect the nomination of someone already blocked by the Judiciary Committee. McConnell told reporters on Wednesday that he was going to wait to comment on Breyer's retirement until after an official announcement is made. Multiple news organizations reported Wednesday that sources close to Breyer had said he was going to retire, and that Democratic President Joe Biden was expected to make an official announcement about the matter this week. Breyer, 83, the oldest member of the court, was appointed in 1994 by President Bill Clinton, the New York Times, a former newspaper, reported. After the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg in 2020 and the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett by President Donald John Trump, he has become the subject of an energetic campaign by liberals who want him to step down to ensure that Mr. Biden could name a successor while Democrats control the Senate. Breyer was not reportedly not happy that the news broke on Wednesday, according to Fox News anchor Shannon Bream, which we'll talk about that in just a second. So, yeah, I don't think that this works either. I really don't. But this does seem like the copium out there that says, oh, yes, well, look at this one little-known deal that we have here. We could block another nominee if we just come out here and follow this one little-known deal here. Which, and once again, I mean, if this is such an egregious nominee that they've got to come back out here and do this by the nuclear option no matter what, if this is, I mean, a terrible, terrible nominee, then yes, by all means, protect us at some point here. But for the most part, we're looking at a situation where this maintains the all-important makeup of the court that the left seems to think is the most important thing up in the world. And I don't think Republicans are going to do anything to block this. I really don't. Not that they should. In fact, I would like to see judicial nominees get to a point where we're seeing 90, 95, 97 members of the Senate vote to confirm, not this nuclear option bullshit. But that's the way that I would rather see the world. Speaking of Shannon Bream, like we have said a couple times before, Shannon Bream, who is blue checkmarked as well, who is silence in the face of evil, is itself evil. God will not hold us gutless. Not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act. Bonhoeffer, I don't know who this person is, but apparently this person has a blue checkmark and 533,000.7 followers. So that's what we see off of that. Multiple sources tell me Justice Breyer was not planning to announce his retirement today. They describe him as upset with how this is played out. We will wait any official notice from his office and / or the Supreme Court Public Information Office. Shannon goes on to say, a bit more clarity, I'm told Justice Breyer had firmly decided on his own to retire, and that an announcement was due very soon, and while it appears someone jumped the gun on that, better to characterize him as surprised by the events today than upset. So it does, okay. And I hadn't seen this tweet before. I'd seen this one already, but I hadn't seen this one before. So it does appear that, yes, he was planning to retire already. He was planning to do that. I got to walk back what I said at the top of the show, because it's, you know, what I said at the top of the show was, I don't know if he's planning to retire now, but yes, it does look like he was planning to retire already. But he just didn't want the announcement out there right now because there's so much else, probably because there's so much else going on in the world right now, that they don't want this to be the top news story off of this while we're looking in at the abortion case that's coming out of Texas and the one that's coming out of Mississippi, while we're looking at multiple gun rights cases that he's still going to rule on, and while we are looking at what could possibly be happening in Eastern Europe. So we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. What else do we have here? Oh, we've got one from our very own Arvold, the orange-haired Lorax over on Twitter. Quote tweeting Ayanna Presley saying, at POTUS, it's time for a black woman on the Supreme Court. Our very own Arvold is out there in the Handmaid's Tale outfit. That's our Volt. That's definitely our Volt right there with the low hat and the red dress and everything. Telling us I was abused by whomever they nominate next. I am sorry this is happening to you, our Volt. I really am. Alright, Jonathan Turley tweets out, Jen Psaki just reaffirmed that President will only consider a black woman for the next nomination, a threshold, gender, and race condition that the court itself has found unconstitutional for schools and unlawful for private businesses. And we will not be using the Jonathan Turley article, obviously, but yes, Psaki has affirmed that it is only going to be a black woman. Only. Nobody else qualified. Your qualifications are only the color of your skin and the plumbing that you have down in your fucking pants. From CNN. Biden said he'd put a black woman on the Supreme Court. Here's who he may pick to replace Breyer. From Ariana DeVoe and Tierney Sneed. In what will be one of the most monumental endeavors of Joe Biden's presidency, the retirement of Stephen Breyer sets the stage for an immensely important decision by the president. Not really. It's not really that big of a deal. If he was replacing Thomas, we'd be having a different conversation right now. President Biden replacing a Clinton appointee is not that big of a deal. Breyer's seat may be the only one that Biden fills on the Supreme Court, and it may not be one that he fills at all if Republicans retake the Senate before the president's choice for a replacement is confirmed. On the campaign trail, Biden vowed to put a black woman on the high court, which would be a historic first. A short list of potential nominees have been circulating Washington well before Breyer's retirement plans became public, and officials in the White House counsel's office built files on various candidates in anticipation of a potential vacancy. Now those efforts will ramp up significantly as the president will likely hold one-on-one meetings before announcing his pick. The White House is stacked with officials deeply familiar with the confirmation process, starting with Biden himself, who chaired the Senate Judiciary Committee, as well as the White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain. Just so you know, this is going to be Ron Klain's justice. This isn't going to be Biden's justice. Who has experienced at the White House counsel's office and working for the Senate Judiciary Committee. With Democrats holding the narrowest of majorities in the upper chamber, Biden will have to choose someone who can safely get 50 votes in the Senate. Harris could provide the tie-breaking vote if the Senate split on the nomination. I wonder what happens if it's her. I don't think it's going to be, but I wonder what would happen if it was her. In addition to the vote count, Biden has also asked to keep an eye on the calendar. Senate Republicans are likely to retake the chamber in this year's midterms, and have already signaled that they would block a Biden nominee to the Supreme Court. It typically takes 2 to 3 months for a president to see his nominee confirmed to the Senate. Once he or she is named, the most recent justice, however, was confirmed in just a month and a half, as Senate Republicans rushed to get Amy Coney Barrett approved before the 2020 election. Given the disappointments that have been recently dealt to the progressives under the Biden admin, between the congressional demise of the president's Build Back Bullshit proposal and his failure to find a way forward on voting rights legislation, Biden's choice for the Supreme Court gives him the opportunity to reinvigorate the Democratic base. If she is confirmed, Biden will secure a much-needed victory for his administration. It is amazing, by the way, it is amazing that the only qualification to call this a major victory is whether or not the person menstruates and has a darker shade of skin tone. How is that a much-needed victory for his administration? How about actually getting a nominee on the court that's like Breyer? Somebody who enjoys his or her job, somebody who enjoys being a wordsmith, and somebody who looks at the Constitution and says, hey, let's try to be as free as we possibly can. I don't care for a lot of Breyer's votes off of this, but I do like his judicial philosophy, regardless. At least his public one. So here are the potential nominees who have been on the Observer shortlist. D.C. Circuit Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Biden has already elevated Ketanji Brown Jackson, once appointing her last year to the U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C., which is considered the second most powerful federal court in the country. Previously, the 51-year-old judge served on the federal district court in D.C. Because of the appellate appointment, she's already been through a vetting process that included an interview with the president himself. Fittingly, she clerked for Breyer and holds degrees from Harvard and Harvard Law. So, she wouldn't be a bad pick. She also served as an assistant federal public defender, making her a prime example of the Biden White House's focus on appointing judges with backgrounds that are outside the typical persecutor and big law box. We have California Supreme Court Justice Leandra Kruger. Kruger, now 45, was the youngest person to be appointed to the California Supreme Court when then Governor Jerry Brown nominated her in 2014. Kruger is intimately familiar with the Supreme Court, having worked as a clerk for the late Justice John Paul Stevens and served as an acting deputy solicitor general in the Obama admin. While in the Solicitor General's office, she argued 12 cases in front of the Supreme Court, representing the government at the Justice Department. She also earned the AG's Award for Exceptional Service, the department's highest award for employee performance, in 2013 and in 2014. At the California Supreme Court, she has authored notable opinions on the Fourth Amendment, holding that law enforcement could not search a woman's purse without a warrant after she declined to provide a driver's license, and upholding the California law that requires law enforcement to collect DNA samples as well as fingerprints from all persons arrested for or convicted of felony offenses. South Carolina U.S. District Court Judge Michelle Childs, a judge in South Carolina's federal court, is said to have major booster in House Majority Whip James Clyburn, a Biden ally who helped deliver South Carolina for the eventual nominee in the 2020 presidential Democratic primary. Just last month, Biden nominated Childs to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit Court, and the nomination remains pending. A graduate of the University of South Carolina School of Law, Childs does not have the Ivy League pedigree shared by 8 of the 9 justices. Her cheerleaders have touted her public school education and other elements of her background as an advantage for Democrats, according to a 2021 New York Times report, and as a way to fight back against the claims that the party has become too elitist in its makeup. I don't think that she has a chance in hell, and I think that this particular one should probably be weighed out, at least until she's got some experience on the circuit court. Sherilyn Ifill, a civil rights attorney who's recently announced plans to step down from her role as president director of the NAACP. So a massive partisan. That's going to be a hard no. Anita Earl, 61-year-old North Carolina Supreme Court Associate Justice, whose age would likely hamper serious consideration from Democrats looking to seat a younger nominee on the High Court. Yeah, we want to have somebody that's there for 40 years. Wilhelmina Mimi Wright, district judge on Minnesota's federal district court, whose consideration would likely please Amy Klobuchar, who's going to vote for whoever Biden puts forward no matter what, so I don't know why they're courting her. Eunice Lee, a circuit judge from a former New York public defender. Circuit Judge Candace Jackson Akiwumi, an alumna of Chicago's public defender's office, whose appointment by Biden to the 7th Circuit was cheered by Dick Durbin of Illinois. And there are also the perennials out there, Stacey Abrams, and CNN's not going to put any of this out here, but there's also the perennials of Stacey Abrams, Kamala Harris, Black Hillary Clinton, and Michelle Obama. I don't think any of those 4 have any chance in hell of doing this. There are some nominees out here, just looking at the resumes, that I do like, especially Ketanji Brown Jackson and Leandra Kruger. I think they would both be phenomenal nominees, especially to come from a Democrat who otherwise is looking for great activists. I actually do think I would not be opposed to either of these top 2. The rest of them, maybe. The rest of them, most likely not. I don't think Michelle Childs has got the experience needed to do this. I think a lot of the other names floated around here are mostly too activistic for it or too old in the situation that they're coming off of this here. But these first two here, I actually like. I think that they would... I don't think that they would be the painful partisans that a lot of their opponents are going to come back out and say. But I'd like to see some competition in them as well against people who have qualifications other than ovaries and dark skin. All right. So with that, that's what we'll see coming out of the Supreme Court. That's what we'll see coming out of the Biden admin. Let's move on here. Let's grab one from ABC News. Let's talk a little bit about Eastern Europe. This is your message from Anthony Blinken about what's happening on the situation. Let's listen to what the Secretary of State has to say.
Regarding American citizens in Ukraine, as you know, earlier this week, I authorized the voluntary departure of a limited number of U.S. employees and ordered the departure of many family members of embassy personnel from Ukraine. This was a decision based on one factor only: the safety and security of our colleagues and their families. And given the continued massive buildup of Russian forces on Ukraine's borders, which has many indications of preparations for an invasion, these steps were the prudent ones to take. I want to be clear that our embassy in Kyiv will remain open, and we continue to maintain a robust presence to provide diplomatic, economic, and security support to Ukraine. The State Department has also issued an updated travel advisory due to the potential for security conditions to deteriorate rapidly and without warning if Russia invades or commits other destabilizing actions inside Ukraine. Our message now for any Americans in Ukraine is to strongly consider leaving using commercial or other privately available transportation options. These options remain readily available. And the embassy may extend loans to those who can't afford the cost of a commercial ticket. While the State Department will always seek to provide consular services wherever possible, Russian military action would severely impact our ability to perform that work. And if Russia invades, civilians, including Americans still in Ukraine, could be caught in a conflict zone between combatant forces. The U.S. government may not be in a position to aid individuals in these circumstances. This has long been the case in conflict zones around the world. So, while we don't know whether Russia will continue its aggression toward Ukraine, either way, we have a responsibility to provide this notice to Americans there.
So, with that being said, this is, we've talked about this for the last 2 weeks, about the fact that Blinken and the State Department have all said, hey, get yourself out of there if you can. Go ahead, because we can entertain. But we've always heard it secondhand. We've always read the report, done this. This is Anthony Blinken actually saying, get out now, because we don't know if we're going to be able to get you out or not. This is Blinken actually coming out and admitting the fact that, well, they don't know what the fuck is going on. And you know it as well as I do. So that's what we're going to take from Anthony Blinken here. Let's grab one from CNBC. U.S. calls for serious diplomatic path forward as Russia adds troops near the Ukraine, from Amanda Macias. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said the U.S. delivered a document to Moscow on Wednesday that lays out a serious diplomatic path forward should Russia decide against invading the Ukraine. Blinken said the contents of the document were shared with NATO allies and that President Biden was intimately involved with its crafting. U.S. Ambassador to Russia John Sullivan handed over Washington's written responses. The development came as NATO warned Russia that Russia continued to increase its military presence along the Ukrainian border. U.S. officials, including Biden, said they expect the Kremlin to launch an attack on the former Soviet nation. Blinken said the document set forth areas of how Washington and Moscow can work to advance collective security interests. Right now, the document is with them and the ball is in their court, Blinken said. Whether they choose the path of diplomacy and dialogue, or whether they decide to renew aggression against the Ukraine, we're prepared either way. Prepared to do what? Prepared to do what, exactly? Apparently, the last quarter GDP growth was better than expected. Hey, we're still not back to where we were before the economy lost 30%, when all these wonderful Democrat governors shut down their economies. We're not back to that point yet, but hey, we had better than expected numbers. The U.S. will not publicly release the document in order to provide space for confidential bilateral talks, the Secretary of State added. For months, the West has watched as Russian President Vladimir Putin has sent more than 100,000 forces with advanced equipment to areas along Ukraine's border. The Kremlin has denied that the troop deployment is a prelude to an attack and has instead characterized the movement as a military exercise. Russian officials have meanwhile reportedly called on the U.S. to prevent an eastward expansion of the NATO military alliance. Russia has also demanded that the U.S. shall not establish military bases in the territories of any former Soviet states that are not already members of NATO or use the infrastructure for any military activities or develop bilateral military cooperation with them. That's not your call, asshole. If the Ukraine wants to go onto a military alliance with the U.S., which I can't imagine why they would ever want to fucking do that. We failed in Afghanistan. I can't imagine why they would want to do that, but if they wanted to do that, that's their business and their call, not yours, Mr. Putin. The US and NATO have previously said that such a request from the Kremlin cannot be accommodated. Since 2002, the Ukraine sought entry into NATO. The group's Article 5 clause states that an attack on one member country is considered an attack on all of them. Biden told reporters Tuesday that a full-scale Russian invasion of the Ukraine would radically alter European security. If he were to move in with all those forces, it'd be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world, Biden said. Not quite. Biden is exaggerating right now because Biden needs a war or something to prop himself up. Coming into the midterms in 2022, coming up here in November, he needs something to come back and prop up his asterisk administration right now. So he needs to have this war off of here, but this is not a major... This wouldn't radically change European security of the world. It would not be good, don't get me wrong. But it would change, the most it would change would be the makeup and the transport of energy. If Russia were to take all the remaining seaports out of the southern tip of the Ukraine, or take Kiev and the Ukraine itself, make them back into a Soviet state once again, it would affect and alter the way that energy is transported out into Eastern Europe and make Russia the dominant force for land transport and pipeline transport for European energy, which they are at this point anyway because the sanctions came off of Nord Stream 2. But this is not World War III level stuff unless an alliance forms and something else happens with Taiwan and possibly North Korea. But that's what we're seeing coming out of that, and that's where we go with that. From the Associated Press, U.S. offers no concessions in response to Russia on Ukraine. From Vladimir Isachenkov and Matthew Lee. The Biden admin and NATO told Russia on Wednesday there would be no U.S. or NATO concessions on Moscow's main demands to resolve the crisis over Ukraine. Excuse me. In a separate written response delivered to the Russians, the U.S. and NATO held firm to the alliance's open-door policy for membership, rejected a demand to permanently ban Ukraine from joining, and said allied deployments of troops and military equipment in Eastern Europe are non-negotiable. Well, that's because they're allies of NATO and the U.S., and per their deals, they can do whatever the fuck they want. There is no change, will be no change, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said. Also not up for negotiation will be the U.S. and European response to any Russian invasion of the Ukraine, he said, repeating the mantra that such incursion would be met with massive consequences and severe economic costs. The responses were not unexpected and mirrored what senior US and NATO officials have been saying for weeks. Nonetheless, they are, and the eventual Russian reaction to them, could determine whether Europe will again be plunged into war. There was no immediate response from Russia, but Russian officials have warned that Moscow would quickly take retaliatory measures if the US and its allies reject its demands. Seeking possible off-ramps that would allow Russia to withdraw the estimated 100,000 troops it has deployed near the Ukraine's border without appearing to have lost the battle of wills, the U.S. response did outline areas in which some Russian concerns might be addressed, provided it de-escalates tensions with the Ukraine. Speaking to reporters in Washington, Blinken said Russia would not be surprised by the content of the several-page American document that the U.S. ambassador to Russia, John Sullivan, delivered Wednesday to the Russian Foreign Ministry. All told, it sets out a serious diplomatic path forward should Russia choose it, he said. The documents we've delivered includes concerns of the U.S. and our allies and partners about Russia's actions that undermine security, a principled and pragmatic evaluation of the concerns that Russia had raised, and our own proposals for areas where they may be able to find common ground. Yeah, you guys don't have a lot of common ground right now. And if Vlad decides that he wants to make the Ukraine a Soviet state again, you're kind of caught with your pants down here. Unless, of course, you're attempting to incite another world war to make yourself a wartime president/administration. From Reuters. Explainer. Weakest link why Russian gas puts Europe in a bind over the Ukraine. You're just figuring this out now? From Edmund Blair. Excuse me. Escalating tensions between the West and Russia over Ukraine have raised concerns about vital Russian oil and gas flows to Europe, prompting the U.S. to offer reassurances that it will help its European allies find alternative supplies. Like Keystone. But that may be mission impossible for Washington. Even without a buildup of Russian forces on the Ukraine border, U.S. warnings of painful sanctions if tanks rumble across, the world's oil and gas producers have struggled to meet global demand, pushing crude prices to their highest since 2014 and driving European gas prices to stratospheric levels last year. Russia denies it has plans to invade, but if a crisis does flare, there are few, if any, alternatives to fill a gap caused by any disruption to supplies from Russia, one of the world's top 3 oil producers and the second biggest gas producer. How reliant is Europe on Russian oil and gas? Well, thanks to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that got desanctioned. In a word, very. Russia supplies the EU with about a third of its requirements for crude and gas. Gas is mainly pumped via pipelines that transit Ukraine or other Eastern European nations, heating homes and powering industry across the 27-nation bloc and its neighbors, such as Britain. Russian supplies have become increasingly important as Europe's own oil and gas production, mainly from the North Sea, have dwindled, although Norway, the biggest North Sea producer, still supplies about a third of Europe's gas requirements. Why not buy more fuel from the Middle East and beyond? Because they're currently pissed off at most of the nations down there, too. Some European states, particularly those once in the Soviet Union's orbit, have long complained that the EU has become too dependent on Russian gas, but changing the balance is not easy. EU states have built or expanded terminals to receive liquefied natural gas shipments from the Middle East, the US, or elsewhere. Gas comes to Europe via pipelines from North African producers. Yet Russia still dominates with its abundant gas reserves, the proximity of its fields, and an extensive existing pipeline network, and its dominance shows no sign of waning. A major new pipeline has just been built from Russia under the Baltic Sea to Germany, known as Nord Stream 2, although it hasn't started up yet, amid a dispute fueled by the latest political tensions. So that's what we're seeing right now. And of course, cold winter. I mean, we saw record colds. Not record colds, but we saw definitely damn colds in Wisconsin yesterday, and we're going to see more of them across the rest of the week here. We've got 1 day of reprieve and 1 day of warmth. to work from right now. But it's extensively cold, and yes, we're not producing enough gasoline, oil, or natural gas to send over there without raising our own prices as much. Open up that Keystone, get it out there, get it on a boat, get it over there. Do something. But of course, they shall do nothing. All right, let's come back domestically here, starting with the New York Post. Spotify sides with Joe Rogan, removes Neil Young's music, a costly move. From Hannah Frischberg. Spotify has sided with its podcast superstar over Neil Young. The legendary folk singer gave the streaming behemoth an ultimatum earlier this week, saying he refused to allow his music on the same platform as Joe Rogan. The Heart of Gold singer accused Rogan and his podcast of spreading false information about the Pinkpox vaccines. Spotify reportedly paid more than a $100 million deal to be the exclusive home of Rogan's show. Young, meanwhile, stands to lose 60% of his streaming income from his defiant stance, he said in a statement on his website. We want all the world's music and audio content to be available to Spotify users, a spokesperson for the company told the Wall Street Journal. With that comes great responsibility in balancing both safety for listeners and freedom for creators. Since the start of the pandemic, the spokesman noted, Spotify removed more than 20,000 COVID-related podcast episodes. Still, Young's protests were not sufficient to drop its lucrative star talker. We regret Neil's decision to remove his music from Spotify, but hope to welcome him back soon. The spokesperson added, Rogan's podcast has attracted an estimated 11 million listeners. Young's letter, which is now deleted from his website, did not mince words in accusing the streaming giant of giving an undeserved platform to Rogan and his COVID-19 vaccine misinformation. I want you to know, to let Spotify know immediately. Today, I want all my music off their platform, wrote the 76-year-old rock icon. I am doing this because Spotify is spreading fake information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them. The note even included a formal ultimatum. They can have Young or Rogan, not both. In a statement posted on his website, Young thanked his publisher, Hypnosis, and his label Warner Records were praised for supporting his ultimatum. Losing 60% of worldwide streaming income by leaving Spotify is a big deal, a costly move, but worth it for our integrity and beliefs. Misinformation about COVID is over the line. He went on to nudge other artists to take a similar stance. Well, here's the reality of things. Spotify paid $10 million to have Rogan exclusively go to Spotify. They're standing with their investment. Now, yes, they can come back out and pay to have these other people on there, but they're not exclusive to Spotify either. Rogan is. I mean, he's got his YouTube channel too, but that stuff's getting banned and taken down left and right. But, I mean, you can't go to another platform and listen to Rogan right now, as far as I know. You can't go to another audio platform and listen to Rogan. There's just the one place. They've got the exclusivity, and 11 million people are going to Spotify just to listen to Joe Rogan. Whereas with Neil Young, they can go to YouTube. That's when I shared out. When people were asking me who Neil Young was, I shared out 3 songs off of YouTube. You can go to Apple Music. You can go to the CD store and buy a Neil Young CD. You can go down to the exclusive company in Milwaukee and buy a Neil Young record. You can't buy a record of Joe Rogan's talk with Dr. Malone. That'd be kind of cool if you could, actually. Buy a 45 of Joe Rogan talking to Robert Malone. Play it on 36 just to see how it is, and then play it backwards to find all the satanic messages. That would actually be kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, there's no exclusivity with Neil Young. And this is coming, by the way, from a person who has occasionally enjoyed Neil Young's music. But I still don't think that he had the clout or the pull to do what he tried to do. Confirmed Meiser. Man, Dave, job, good. Actually says it very, very, very interestingly and perfectly off of this here. And this was the thing, because they expected Neil Young to come off of here and say, okay, well, you can have my music, or you can have Joe Rogan's music, huh? You can have one or the other, but you can't have both. They expected Spotify to cave. What scares the progs about Spotify stuff is the potential that some companies might come to the conclusion that caving to these activist campaigns isn't actually better for business. Progressivism relies on bending corporations to its will. Without that, it's nothing. It's certainly possible that internal worker revolts are eventually enough at most companies, or in Spotify's case, that the artists begin to unite against them. But if neither one happens, that terrifies the left. Yes. And, especially for Neil Young. Now, Neil Young says he's losing 60% of his income, his current royalties, from coming off of Spotify. But he's still got records, and he still gets a cut every time one of them is sold. He still has CDs. He still has Apple Music. He's got a lot of other avenues and options to continue to make money. He's got the royalties every time one of his songs is played in a movie. He's got a 50-year career sitting behind him of ways to get royalties off of this. And some of the names that were floated around this was, hey, let's see if we can get Taylor Swift to go do the same thing. Taylor Swift would lose 70 to 90% of her income if she pulled her music from Spotify. From a business standpoint, that is not an effective number. She wouldn't even be able to pay the insurance plan that she has on her legs if she came off of Spotify. And especially in the digital streaming world, a lot of the new stuff, yes, there are physical copies out there, but it's not as prevalent as somebody like Neil Young was. So that's what they say coming off of that. Biden Surgeon General weighed in on the Spotify thing. Biden Surgeon General suggests Rogan podcast should be censored. Big tech has an important role to play. Oh, those fucking globalists. From Amanda Prestigiacomo. U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said Tuesday on MSDNC that not only the government but big tech companies have a role to play when it comes to censoring so-called misinformation and curating accurate information to the public. Let me stop you right there. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, the freedom to assembly, the freedom to establish a religion. Congress shall make no law. Go read your Constitution again. The one you swore an oath to uphold. Murthy made the comments after he was specifically asked by MSDNC host Mika Brzezinski about the alleged misinformation on Rogan's highly popular Joe Rogan Experience and general Facebook posts. What do you think are the best ways to push back on misinformation about COVID that continues to be aggressively pushed, whether it be Rogan's podcast or all over Facebook? The host asked Murthy, according to The Blaze. We can have the best science available, we can have the best public health expertise available, but it won't help people if they don't have access to accurate information, the Biden-appointed Surgeon General answered, adding, people have the right to make their own decisions. Apparently not, but they also have the right to have accurate information to make that decision with. Who decides? Who decides? You? You're a partisan fucking hack. Big tech companies, Murthy said, have an important role to play since they're the predominant places where we're seeing misinformation spread. This is not just about what the government can do, he emphasized. This is about what companies and individuals, recognizing that the only way we get past misinformation is if we are careful about what we say and use the power that we have to limit the spread of misinformation. So, fascism is what you're suggesting. Getting private companies to do what you can't because you're bound by a constitution and not allowed to. That's fascism. You simple-minded prick. From the Hill, speaking of big tech, YouTube permanently bans Dan Bongino. From Chris Mills Rodrigo. I will make a confession. I have never listened to a full minute of Dan Bongino's content. I have heard him on various terrestrial radio shows. I've heard him partially interviewed for a minute or so on various smaller web shows. I have not listened to a full minute. I would probably hazard a guess, so say I haven't listened to 10 seconds of Dan Bongino's proper content. I don't care for him. But that doesn't mean he needs to be censored. Everybody should be able to speak. This is from Chris Mills Rodrigo. YouTube on Wednesday permanently banned conservative commentator Dan Bongino from the platform, saying he attempted to evade a previous suspension. The Fox host uploaded a video to his main channel, while his secondary channel, which primarily hosted short clips from his digital radio show, was actively suspended for violating YouTube's COVID-19 misinformation policy. When a channel receives a strike, it's against our terms of service to post content or use another channel to circumvent the suspension, a YouTube spokesperson told The Hill. Well, you're actually not supposed to do that on Twitter either. In fact, you can get banned for only using the Twitter account that you've had since 2009 and never using another one. You can get banned for ban evasion for doing just that. Ask me how I know. Both of Bongino's channels have been removed and he will not be able to create a new one in the future, the platform said. Coming up in the midterms, by the way. But guess what? He's still on Rumble. The YouTube spokesperson confirmed that attempts to make new channels associated with his name will also be denied. Bongino had also announced in a video posted earlier this week that he was already planning on leaving YouTube and the nearly 900,000 subscribers on the main channel for good. He had previously pledged to do the same with Twitter over his unsubstantiated claims of anti-conservative bias on the platform, but ultimately returned to the service. Unsubstantiated claims of anti-conservative bias on Twitter. Really, Hill? Bongino will likely continue posting videos on Rumble, because he fucking owns it. A YouTube competitor championed by some on the far right that he was an early investor in. So, Bongino is off Twitter. Once again. For ban evasion. I bet you my YouTube goes away before midterms. I bet you. Alright, let's talk about our neighbors to the north. The Juggernaut, Quebec, announces that the unvaxxed are not allowed inside of large stores unless accompanied by a health warden that will monitor them so they do not purchase anything except for food or medicine. Let's listen.
Today, big box stores that have a footprint of 1,500 square meters or more are going to have to ask
square meters,
to show proof of vaccination. Now, pharmacies and grocery will be exempt from this. So if you're going into a Costco or a Walmart or something like that, where you might be going in to buy groceries or visit the pharmacy, in that case, an employee will have to be with that person as they walk through the store to make sure that they do not go and buy other products or other items that might be in the store. Now, today, big box stores that have a footprint of...
So if you're more than 1,500 meters there, then you can only go in there if you're unvaxxed to get food and medicine, But we're the kindest people in the universe, We're so kind. That's all we do is we try to help people, hey, and we're afraid of the dark. But we only ask that you bum me a smoke if I ask you for it, eh? What a bunch of shit. Trudeau got into this as well. Trudeau commenting on the convoy coming out to go and meet him in Ottawa to tell him that their mandates are fucking shit here. From Disclosed.tv, New Trudeau says the small fringe trucker convoy on the way to Ottawa does not represent the views of Canadians. Let's listen.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Next question.
They're a small minority, so we don't care about them because they don't have voting majority there, eh? We don't care about these people. Get your vaccine there, eh? From ABC 7 News. San Jose becomes the first in the U.S. to require gun liability insurance, city officials say, from Olga R. Rodriguez and Juliette Williams. Man, those chicken wings look good. Beef and veal is up 20.9%. That is true, by the way. Gun owners will soon be required to carry liability insurance and pay a fee in the city of San Jose that officials say would be the first of its kind in the U.S. following a trend of other Democratic-led cities that have sought to rein in violence through stricter rules. Congratulations! Only the people who are illegal to carry guns will now be carrying guns. The city council voted on the plan on Tuesday, but it's unclear exactly when it goes into effect. After the vote, San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo released a statement saying, in part, "Thank you to my council colleagues who continue to show their commitment to reducing gun violence and its devastation in our community." The Firearm Policy Coalition says it will fight the new law, calling it burdensome, unconstitutional, and prohibited by California law to law-abiding firearm-owning citizens. Since San Jose's recalcitrant city council members don't believe that the U.S. Constitution applies to them or other citizens, Firearm Policy Coalition and our members are now committed to fight the city's outrageous and offensive policies in federal litigation and take every possible action to block their enforcement, the group said. What exactly, by the way, are you taking liability against if you're taking liability insurance out on a gun? And I understand that there are mechanical failures and whatnot, but that's not what the gun violence is. I understand that you can clean your gun off, or you can be cleaning your gun and it can go off in your hand. I understand that. It's very rare, but it happens. That would be your liability insurance right there to make sure. But they're talking about trying to curb the gun violence statistics in their cities by using this liability insurance off of this here, which, if somebody's coming busting down that door looking to cause me or a guest in my home, because I'm not married, so not my wife, not my kids, but if they're looking to cause me or a guest in here harm or take away my stuff, it's not going to be a liability issue. I'm going to kill that motherfucker. And then I'm going to call the police and say, hey, I just killed this motherfucker. I will turn myself in. Let's do the investigation. Let's get this done and out of here. But a guy's brains are currently dripping off the wall. So let's get this taken care of. That's not a liability thing. Like I said, the liability would be if I was cleaning the AR or the handgun and the firing pin fell down, hit, and blew a hole in the wall. That would be liability insurance. All right. Here's... Oh, we gotta get the fuck out of here. I just looked at the clock. Holy shit. What can we get away with? We gotta get away with a couple more here, plus thing I like and thing that I hate. Let's do this one, let's do this one, let's do this one, and then we will call it a day. Alright, from the @POTUS Twitter handle. And this afternoon, I'm signing an executive order to make sexual harassment an offense in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, man, come on. And to strengthen the military's response to domestic violence and the wrongful broadcast or distribution of intimate visual images. Which I'm a little surprised that this wasn't already a thing, because sexual harassment, whether by criminal or civil statute, is already a thing in most private companies. I can't believe the government didn't do this already, in and of themselves. Friend of the show, Jessica Green, says, why can't you go through the normal lawmaking process for that? The Veterans for Liberty says the proper way to add articles to the U.S. MJ is to include them in the NDAA that Congress votes on. I was actually to the understanding that this would actually exclusively go through the executive branch because the military is an executive branch department, with the president being the commander-in-chief. I actually was to the understanding that this was the proper way to do this. So I may be wrong on that aspect, but that was my understanding of the way that the military structure went, is that this was the proper way to do this. But there again, I can't believe that this wasn't already a thing. Like, this is a thing everywhere in the private industry. And again, it might just be from civil code, but this is a thing everywhere in the private sector. Why wasn't this already a thing? Anybody? Bueller? Reading from CBS, Biden signs order making sexual harassment an offense under the military code. CBS has given no author on this article. President Biden has signed an executive order to make sexual harassment an offense under the Uniform Code of Military Justice and to improve the military's response to domestic violence and the unlawful distribution of intimate images. So, ladies, if you show a pic of yourself in your bra in your ACU and somebody leaks it out, that person might be liable to criminal offenses. But, see, if you don't send out a picture of you in your ACU in your bra, it's really not that big of a deal. Establishing sexual harassment as an offense under the code was called for by the I Am Vanessa Gillian Act. In the 2022 NDAA, Gillian was only 20 when she was murdered in April 2020, allegedly by a fellow soldier. A U.S. Army report said officers at Fort Hood ignored her complaints of sexual harassment in the time leading up to her death. Mr. Biden has said that he supports the military removing the investigation and prosecution of sexual assault cases from commander's control, which would be a big change for military criminal justice system. Meanwhile, everything else you do in the military goes through the NCIS. Or some other branch of the JAG, I should say. It wouldn't just be the NCIS, that's naval. But everything else that you do in the military goes through the JAG. But this, they're going to take away from the Judge Advocate General. Just this one thing comes away from the Judge Advocate General. In a statement, the White House said the executive order strengthens the military justice system's response to gender-based violence and delivers on key recommendations from the Independent Review Commission on Sexual Assault in the Military that Lloyd Austin launched in March of 2021. Last summer, Mark Milley, the Defense Department's top officer, signaled he is open. Oh, he's open. To significant and fundamental change in how the military handles sexual assault and harassment, but he would want to see a detailed study before the military justice system changes how it handles serious crimes. Austin has also expressed an openness to make changes to the military justice system. So this actually might eliminate the JAG entirely. I doubt that. I doubt that they would let themselves lose that level of authority over people who have signed a contract with the government, but this could possibly actually eliminate the JAG. But we'll see what happens and where that goes. And the last one that we'll do on news, before we do thing that I like and thing that I hate, is we will listen to the Biden admin, Mr. Biden himself, tell us why inflation is so high. Let's listen.
Last week, I point out that Intel announced a $20 billion plan to build a semiconductor manufacturing facility in Ohio, one of the largest of its kind in our nation's history. It's going to create 10,000 jobs. And I might add, one of the reasons for inflation being high as it is, 1/3 of the reason that inflation is up is the cost of vehicles. And the reason the cost of vehicles is up, they don't have the component parts, meaning significantly the semiconductor. And last week...
Yes, you have supply chain issues, Mr. Biden. You are correct. But that's not the reason that inflation is up to historic decades-high levels. What's pushing inflation to the top is the price of chicken, and the price of beef, and the price of cottage cheese, and the price of vegetables. The lower level stuff, that adds up. People can, for the most part, either go out and buy a used car if they need to, not currently because they're ridiculously expensive, I'll give that, or repair the vehicles that they have. We live in a country where most every family has 3 to 5 cars. This is not the reason that you think that this is, but hey, you found another way that you can go back and throw the blame and throw your big business buddies up under the bus and hope that they'll still donate to you the next time through. What a fucking moron, I'm telling you. Alright. With that, now we have 5 to carry over for tomorrow here, but we will end the day doing a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. Because it's Thursday and that's what we do. So, thing that I like today. This is actually kind of a thing I like and a thing that I hate, just because I did enjoy this movie. I watched it the other day. But I understand where the weaknesses are. But we're gonna classify this as thing that I like today. I sat down Monday night after the KTZed Redemption, and I watched Home Sweet Home Alone, the new Home Alone movie that came out last year. I sat down and watched this movie. So, first and foremost, as I said off the beginning, I thought that this would actually probably be an enjoyable movie, just to be able to see where technology has taken the booby traps over the last 30 years, since the original Home Alone came out. And I was not disappointed by that either, by the way. Even having the Alexa around, having cell phones around, in spite of the fact that the subject of the movie had no cell phone because he was 10, even having the information for all this here, we were still using, for the most part, very, very low-tech traps. Legos on the ground, bags of sugar, flour, etc., hanging from ropes, a fishing line pulling icicles down against people. One of the things I didn't like about this, though, and John Hughes was a writer off this. I can't believe John Hughes actually signed off on this thing. But one of the things that I noted about this movie was that the kid who is Home Alone, the kid who appears on the front here, on the front of this, was not the subject of the movie. He was not the subject of the movie. He was, in fact, comic relief. And if you actually sit down and watch the movie, you'll pretty quickly realize that Ellie Kemper and Rob Delaney as Pam and Jeff McKenzie, they are the subject of the movie. They are the main protagonists, even though they are the technical criminals of the movie, the people who are breaking in. They are the main protagonists, and I'm not going to give away a lot of spoilers off of this, of course. You do need to watch it for yourself as you go, but yeah, if you've got a subscription to the Mouse, absolutely go back and look at this. But they're the ones that are in trouble. They're the ones who are trying to get out. They're trying to do the hero's journey to get through their major struggle off of this. The kid is an afterthought, meant to make their lives a living hell, and meant for them to overcome in order to come to the dramatic conclusion of the movie. This kid is comic relief, and that's not the way that a Home Alone movie should be. Now, mind you, I've only seen Home Alone 3 once, and I was pretty young when it is. I didn't even bother with Home Alone 4, but I mean, this was an SNL movie. Kenan Thompson, Ellie Kemper, Rob Delaney, these are all SNL alumni. But definitely worth it. Definitely worth the hour and a half to sit back and watch it. Definitely, it's got John Hughes in it. In fact, I was kind of entertained by the fact that that Buzz was in this movie too. Oh, he's not listed in the top cast off of this, but Kevin McAllister, the subject of the original movie, wasn't in it, but his older brother Buzz was. He's the police officer in the movie. So definitely, and like I say, if you like the engineering, if you enjoy that aspect of the Home Alone movies, this did not disappoint in that aspect. In fact, the only complaint that I had was that the actual climactic Home Alone scene where people were breaking in was a little bit short. I think they, with the technology that we have, could have extended that by another 15 minutes. And most movies now are 2 hours anyway, so for an hour and a half runtime movie, you had the time to fill with this, but yeah, it was... The traps were well done. The writing was 5 out of 10. And the subject was all wrong. But it was a decent Home Alone. And now let's do a thing that I hate. Reading from the Daily Mail. Wokery beyond parody because the university slaps a trigger warning on George Orwell's 1984 as it contains explicit materials which some students may find offensive and upsetting. I mean, what's next? What's after that? Are they actually going to burn copies of Fahrenheit 451? From Chris Hastings, art correspondent for Mail on Sunday. As one of the greatest works in Britain's literary canon, 1984 sounds a chilling warning about the dangers of censorship. And now the staff at the University of Northampton have issued a trigger warning. A censorship, if you will, for George Orwell's novel on the grounds that it contains explicit material which some students may find offensive and upsetting. Published in 1949, Orwell's dystopian story set in a totalitarian state which persecutes individual thinking, gave the world phrases such as Big Brother, Newspeak, and Thought Police. Its plot centers on Winston Smith, a government employee who is arrested and tortured over an illicit love affair, but it also makes powerful points about what can happen to a society that doesn't cherish academic freedoms or its own history. Yet, it is one of several literary works which have been flagged up to students in Northampton who are studying a module called Identity Under Construction. They are warned that the module addresses challenging issues related to violence, gender, sexuality, class, race abuses, sexual abuse, political ideas, and offensive language. In addition to Orwell's book, academics identify several works in the module that have the potential to be offensive and upsetting, including the Samuel Beckett play Endgame, the graphic novel for V for Vendetta by Alan Moore and David Lloyd, and Jeanette Winterson's Sexing the Cherry. Tory MP Andrew Bridgen said, "There's a certain irony that students are now being issued a trigger warning before reading 1984. Our university campuses are fast becoming dystopian Big Brother zones where newspeak is practiced to diminish the range of intellectual thought and cancel speakers who don't conform to it. Too many of us, and nowhere is it more evident than our universities, have freely given up our rights to instead conform to a homogenized society governed by a liberal elite protecting us from ideas that they believe are too extreme for our sensibilities." Orwell biographer David Taylor said, "I think 13-year-olds might find some scenes in the novel disturbing, but I think anyone of undergraduate age is really shocked. I don't think, rather, anyone of undergraduate age is really shocked by a book anymore." The seminal novel has regularly been adapted for stage and screen, including an acclaimed film starring John Hurt. Like, seriously, this is peak irony right here. Like I said, the only way you could get more ironic and more on point of the point that's being inside of the book is if they went through and gathered up all the copies of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 and burned them in the square. That is the only way you could get even more on the nose than this. And nobody fucking sees it. Alright. And with that, we're out of here for the day. We're done. I gotta throw some breakfast together and get myself off to work. I'm gonna work outside today because it's relatively warm in southern Wisconsin. 30 degrees. After 2 days of 4 degrees in a row. 30 degrees. It's like a heat wave out here. So, let's finish her off and get out of here. As per usual, friends over on Twitch, stick around because we'll go do some raiding right now. Let's go find somebody to raid and head out of here for the morning. Daily Ignoramus hasn't started yet, so we won't be doing that, but let's go back and raid our friend Nipora over here, and let's head out of here for the day. So we'll be back here tomorrow with, by the way, the live chat. So guys, if you're just lurking right now, get a last minute message in so I can say a special thank you. That'll be at the end of the show tomorrow when I say thank you, and we'll even go through some of the live chat from tomorrow as well, and go and check out and see what it is that you guys have to say. So come back and join us for that tomorrow over here on Contemporary News Headlines, and a special thank you for everybody who comes back and chats in the live chat, and we'll talk about that and what's going on with that. And if not, we will see you here on Monday for more Contemporary or KTZed Redemption. And I might even do a game stream here coming up here in the near future too, because we haven't done that in quite a while, and I want to do something entertaining. I don't want to just do all the stuff here that we're all we're doing here is serious news stuff here. I want to have some fun with you guys, do some music, do some gaming, some stuff like that as well. So come back and join us for that. But we will see you next time, no matter what. Do make sure you guys come back here tomorrow so I can say thank you for lurking, for listening, for leaving your last minute messages in right here. And we will see you then. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.